welcome back to the Outlandsh podcast. My name is Dasanti, and I'm here with Johnny and with our special guest, Darren Le Baron. He actually travels the world, so I'm so honored that he's here to podcast with us today. Do you have a home base?
At the moment, no, but no, I'm originally from London, UK. That's where my foundations are, and that's where I left out to start doing some of this traveling that I'm currently doing.
Okay, how long have you been traveling for?
So if I think about it, actually I started last year, May, and I went home briefly for like 4 weeks and then continued my traveling. So yes, like May will be a year.
That's amazing. I love that you're still able to be up and about and venture around the world, even despite the current events of the world.
Yeah, you have to do what you've got to do, just as far as making sure that you follow all the precautions. Initially in traveling during that pandemic period of time, actually people was like, oh, how are you allowed to travel? I'm like, you're actually allowed to travel. There were certain conditions and criteria for getting into countries. And for the most part, as long as the places I went to, as long as you had a test or you could prove that you wasn't carrying, the virus, you was allowed to travel around. So, I was able to do that, and that's how I got to travel.
Love that. And you travel the world teaching mycology, which is the study of mushrooms. And that's how I came across your page, is because I'm a mushroom fanatic, and so is he.
Do you feel like growing up in London has helped you kind of, like, how do you feel your experience growing up in London has helped, like, you now, currently?
I think one of the most important things now as a navigator, in different ways, I travel physically. I use psychoactives to travel as well to navigate. And I think a lot of that started off as in my childhood when I had to go to school because I had to go to school not in my local area. And, I had to get up early in the morning, make that, an hour journey pretty much to get to school, where most of my friends live really local, went to school locally. And I realized over the years the advantage of that amongst my peers, that I was comfortable getting on buses, trains, metros, and going from A to B, going to the other side of London or outside of London in some cases, where my friends were very much localized. And I think that inspired me from young as into my adulthood to feel comfortable going places by myself. I've got people who like to travel, but they would say I'd never travel by myself to these places or anywhere. In fact, so I was born having to get up, travel, go places, meet family on the other side of not the country, but at least the capital. So that allowed me to feel really comfortable going places by myself. So with that said,
No, yeah, cause I could tell, right? Like you're, like the way you speak and like having to travel and meet new people. Like, so I was just wondering, like, most likely that contributed through your, what you just said.
Yeah. The crazy thing though is that I didn't get to travel internationally until my middle adulthood. So it, that engagement was really like still local. It was like, just how it's very local, like someone who lives on the south side may just be educated in the south side, everything they need is on the south side, and they've never traveled to the north side, but where I'm from, I had to go there, and it was just meeting those people on the other side of town and seeing their differences, learning how to engage with them. So no different, because I had to go to South London to meet family, I had to go to Northwest London to go to school. So I met different people, even though it was all in London, but just the diversity there, and that definitely gave me a skill set that then I could take internationally.
And that's crazy how like that skill set that you learned there, even though it's in one place, you're able to to share that around the world. Yeah,
I appreciate that those experiences. London being a diverse place, it's now become, but even growing up, a very diverse community. So we had people from all cultures all around the world, primarily the English people that were from there. That you had like a very large African Caribbean community, you've got Asian communities, you've got a range of different European folks that are there. And it's like where I was actually born in Newham at one point in time, I don't know if it is still the case, but they considered it the most diverse place on planet Earth. That within that area, you've got cultures from all over the world in such a dense place or space. And you won't find that anywhere else on planet Earth except for where I was born and bred.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I did say I was gonna ask you again, but how's the music scene out there? And like, what'd you grow up listening to over there? And what did you get into? Like, how was the scene over there? Like,
Yeah. So if if you start as early as I, consciously can really remember, like really engaging. I was inspired by most of the popular artists that were at that time. If I was to put anybody up there in my very early ages, probably be Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah,
he was like,
for sure.
So So I'm coming in the era of, you know, Michael Jackson bad, Thriller bad, you know, and then went back into, you know, Off the Wall album, and then into the Jackson 5, because those were a bit before my time, but Michael Jackson was definitely like up there. And then, you know, I like people like Stevie Wonder, you know, I like Blondie, Sting, you know, these were the bands or the groups that were around like as a young child growing up. And then as and when, you know, I grew up around the house, my mum played a lot of reggae and soul music and rare grooves. But then as you get into that age where hip hop entered the frame, that's then basically what sucked me up as far as what I was investing my time and energy into, learning more about, you know, these sounds that were coming out of New York at the time, primarily the early, you know, hip hop stuff. I was inspired by like Big Daddy Kane, Public Enemy. And then when the West Coast got a hold of some stuff with it, then I was very much inspired by like NWA, Ice Cube in particular. And then I learned more about like Too Short and the Bay Area, like Ice-T, all these kind of like the West Coast guys. And then sooner or later, the South came into play. And then that's when it really done something for me. I could actually, look, I'm wearing it today, I think. I'm wearing that. Somebody introduced me to Rap A Lot Records, Ghetto Boys. You know, I think it was like the early 90s. And life has never been the same since that day. So I grew up from the early 90s all the way to right now, listening to stuff out of H-Town, you know, a lot of down south stuff in particular, but primarily from Houston, Texas, Port Arthur, Corpus Christi, just certain artists that were from, you know, the Texas or Dallas regions. There was just something about the music, the sound they created. In particular, I'll say what's got me to where I am now was just the influence. Like once it was just like the live music, there's a lot of live, bluesy depth to the music. Some of the content may not be, you know, appreciated based on the content itself, but I always say that there was a message in the music, and it was these rappers that I personally say were like representing, you know, like my teachers, big brothers, you know, father figures at that time, like the stories that they would tell, the experiences that they would share. These were the things that actually I was learning from at that time. And I make quotes to this day in some of my mycological classes, in my psychedelic classes, in my teaching classes in schools, and I quote rappers, you know, think quotes and sayings that I've learned from rap music that I think apply in real life, day-to-day worlds. And, you know, like I can cross-reference, you know, I don't know Einstein, but I can also cross-reference a Ghetto Boys quote, you know, to teach people about biology, who knows.
Yeah, it's crazy how like just what you listen to. I don't know why, but I always feel like depending on on somebody's playlist, you can tell a lot by their personality. But also at the same time, I don't know. What do you think about that? You think that's a thing?
Yeah, I think music plays a big part in reflecting who people are. You know, what moves them. You know, people like music, and like, I can't stand those tones of, you know, whatever. Don't mean you can't stand a person, but you know, it's like, oh, that really moves and motivates you. And then, you know, like, for all different reasons. So I think like all the things we do reflect, you know, who we are. So you can learn about somebody through the music taste. You know, I don't know if, you know, it's like a cool way to, you know, to really get to know someone. You know, if you meet someone, you know, in your early dating, obviously, like that's a good way to really, it's like, what's your, you know, track for track, back to back, you know, all that type of stuff. So I think that's really important about music in general, as well as learning yourself and learning about other people.
There was a podcast episode on your podcast, Talking Slop, on your YouTube show, where you were talking about Master P's way of ethical entrepreneurship and how he was able to take something when entrepreneurship was demonized, and sometimes it is by spiritual people. So can you elaborate on how entrepreneurship can be ethical, since it's seen as demonized in a lot of spiritual industries, but...
So when you have to find a balance within yourself, know what you want to do, how you're doing it, and know what your principles are, and stand on those, you know, moving forward. So why I'm inspired by people like Master P, Jay Prince, or Little J, as he was known, from Houston, Texas, who founded Rap A Lot Records. These were two iconic figures in my world for showing you examples, tangible examples of coming from nothing, you know, and something that could be considered negative, the environments, the background, you know, even what inspired some of these artists to become artists was because they wanted to leave the hustling life, you know, So I lived a similar lifestyle back where I was from, you know, the inspirations, you know, to go get a job, and jobs weren't necessarily hiring or paying well. So then you look at more tangible alternatives, and the streets offer you alternatives. So then when you go to the streets and you've got what I consider are the street scriptures, which is rap music, teaching you and inspiring you to do street stuff, there's that side of it. But like I was saying earlier on, there was a message in the music. So between, if you picked it up, that's the, in reality. So between rap a lot and looking at people like Jay Prince, who inspired Master P, and seeing that they could take that street hustle, those street ethics, and apply it to music, the music industry, and actually go from, like I do with some of my students, go from selling weed bags to salad bags, or to go from selling crack cocaine to CDs. Like, I think that's a really cool transition, because it's so easy to stay in your comfort zone. And the comfort zone would have been, let's just stay on the streets making money. But it's like, whether you want to make more money, or what these guys showed me was, how they put their families on. They was employing their family members and then the wider community. And I was like, well, through this tool of music, this creative tool, the business side of it can actually be a way forward for many folks. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, not everybody's here to do music, and it's meant to be a rapper or a producer. Yeah. So again, learning different roles or positions in the industry, it opened me up to that. I wanted to be a rapper at one point of time, but once you, like, there's more to the industry, more ways you can get involved or be a part of the industry. And then if I wanted to be a rapper, or I knew someone who did, it's going to take a team, a collective. So I saw the union, the communion, and the transition from this negative lifestyle options, making that transition to something positive. And that's the skills that I've learned from them through the music, and how they've actually applied it over the years. I apply my day to day, like how I do my mushroom workshops is based upon, marketing that I learned through Master P. And just, that how when the CDs, when I bought them, I couldn't wait. I've just got the brand new CD, but I can't wait for the CD that's coming soon, and just being consistent, things like that, and just being, having your unique selling point. So these were the things that I was learning from these guys, coming from places and spaces like New Orleans or Texas, which was like, as I'm hearing, we're at the bottom. That's what I keep hearing when around there, we're at the bottom. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, this is the hood, this is where it all started. But you can see that, like, I've been in 5th Ward since I've been there. I was in South Park, I was in the 3rd Ward, and just meeting people from these communities to say that, your lyrics inspired people like me to actually want to set up businesses. I went from the streets to dabbling in music, but then at the end of the day, of being able to apply that in my own businesses. So whether it's education, enterprise, these are things where I think it's really useful for people like me that may not, pick up a Richard Branson book, or, how Netflix was started. All these, there's, McDonald's, because these are all real pioneering people, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't necessarily attract the audience from the communities where I come from. So people like Master P do, people like Jay Prince do, and now we've got people like Kanye West and Jay-Z and Dr. Dre, and they're showing and proving that you can come from the streets and then move from that transition into music, out of music, into film, into fashion, and that's what I really dig about these guys.
I love that. And I think the principle of it too is, if you have a genuine exchange of value, and if you love what you do and you're believing in yourself and believing in what you're promoting, and as long as it's something that aligns with who you are.
I think, music is like the first form of communication, It's not just music for entertainment, it was music was spiritual, like music was created to move people to, in some cases, to commune with their gods, or their ancestors, So when you realize that, as I said earlier on, like, you can learn about yourself through music, as well as music can teach you about yourself, I feel that it's very powerful. The most powerfulest thing, I always say to folks, you may see me on platforms like podcasts, you might see me, in universities giving workshops or lectures, but what woke me up was music. It was those CDs that I was putting in, and I'm like, I really think that's a more powerful tool, way of reaching people beyond a classroom, beyond the university space. You can hit the world up, through music. So, like, if somebody can translate my teachings into music, into raps, I think that's a better way of getting it out there to the masses.
And I think that's what I love about music too, is because it gives you the confidence and the self-expression that you need to be able to push anything else that you create.
And since we're on the subject, I did want to ask, since, like, I make music and you know about like psychedelics, I have tried while making music, and the song came out good. So I'm sure everybody's experience is different, but in that particular moment, I just don't know what it is. It almost feels like I'm downloading information from like instead of me making it, it didn't feel like I was making the song. Does that make sense?
Most definitely.
Like, what's your opinion on that? Because I know you've probably heard of different experiences, and so like, what's your opinion on that? Like, why is it so different for everyone? And like, even the spiritual aspect of it, like, what's your opinion on like how it aligns with the creation part of something?
Well, I think it's really powerful. You know, even just down to like to really go forward, you know, even things like musical instruments, the first musical instruments like the drum, certain string instruments, it's suggested by the people who crafted these instruments that it was through the usage of certain plants where they were going to certain realms, getting the files, the blueprints, and then coming back to earth and creating these things, finding a tree, carving it out, making a drum, and then creating these sounds. You know, even before creating the drum, you've got the earliest people. It's known that they have what's a music style, what they call water drumming. You know, that's not what they call it themselves, but, you know, the translation into English is water drumming, where you see the women in particular, they go into the water and then they do drumming like on the water, and it's a very spiritual, it's all part of like initiation rites for some, you know, for the women in some cases, and even down to it's like the way they attract certain fish, you know, but it was all done in this kind of rhythmic drumming on the water, so it would either attract as well as scare fish away, so then the people on the other side could capture it. So as I said, music is communication. Music is a tool for, you know, for outside of just entertainment. So there was that side as a form of, you know, art. There's an element of warfare that's suggested with it as well, because the drum itself is also in some cultures considered a weapon. When you get into the mythologies, like they would play the drums and fire would come out of the drums and they would fight their enemies, you know, their nemesis with, you know, drum power and things like that. So bringing it all back to these were entheogenic voyages that were associated with music. And then you also have, if you fast track to, you know, to the here and now, I mentioned Jimi Hendrix earlier on, you know, you've got the Beatles, you know, the Grateful Dead, and like there's many, like not many, if I say anything, probably all the artists that we've ever heard of, you know, that became something, all say that they had some kind of psychedelic experience that's inspired them musically, you know. So, you know, it's kind of it's written in the code law of music that's kind of part and parcel of a lot of the music that has inspired the world today. Is the people took psychedelics, was inspired, created these sounds, you know, like you're saying, like downloads that received, and they're creating. So back to the point, these things make you creative, or make you the creator, or creator-like, God-like, you know, in creation. And what you create could be considered, you know, downloads from heaven, prayers, you know, affirmations through music from heaven, so to speak. So for me, when you bring it right to the here and now, that's why, you know, like a lot of the rappers that I listen to, you know, they will say, you know, we go and we take mushrooms and stuff, and we just create a safe space for ourselves, and we just allow things to happen. You know, where others go in, you know, this is the beat that I want, this is the disc that I want, you know, and kind of arrange it. But some just go in that space and catch a vibe, and what comes out of it, like you said, is like, man, it's better than I thought it was. You know, I've got homies that have done the same, you know, and they're like, shit, I've never produced like this sober, you know what I'm saying? But in that space, I've come back with inspiration, sounds, frequencies. I'm trying to recreate things. So for me, it's always has been, going back to those first people who created instruments and stuff, right through to all those great bands that we know of, to some underground artists right now that's at home making themselves some mushroom tea, and they're gonna, you know, start putting on getting the beat going and see what happens. And I think that's really important, you know, for the future of music and this information getting out there. The more people that take psychedelics and make this kind of music, it will become, you know, interwoven into the music, be part of the fabric.
And do you, what's your thoughts on like microdosing? Because that's the word I've heard around, but I definitely didn't do that day. I didn't microdose anything. So I just wanted your opinion on that. And do you think like, does it have any mental benefits of any sort?
Yeah. Well, you know, as we know, what we do know officially, there's no information out there that's conclusive. All the studies that have been done around microdosing are pretty much independent studies. You know, the only official study that I know of that we've done in the UK, it was people reporting about their microdosing experiences. So why I'm saying that and bringing that back is because it's basically a personal experience. Like, so it's about you taking mushrooms or microdosing, you know, LSD or whatever it may be, and determining your own dosages based on the information that may be available, and then having your own program some programs that are suggested, that are beneficial for mental health, that are beneficial for just your day to day. You're at work and you struggle to get up and be motivated to go to work every day. Therefore, there may be a microdosing program that's suited to that, to support you in getting through that day to day vibe. So depending on what challenges you may have, as well as, you may feel like, I don't have any challenges, man. I just want to be creative. I just want to open up my creativity more. So therefore, you could create a program that might be geared around when you create music. And my dosing will be geared around building me up to a point where I'm in a zone. I'm just in that creative zone. And only you would know if it works.
Yeah, it just depends on the person, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's that personal. It's individualized, in the sense where, I can share with you, when I microdose, this is what happens and this is what I get out of it. And you may say, that's exactly what I'll get out of it. But then when we ask you, you're like, no, when I do it, it's not. And that's then how you gauge your dosages. That's how you gauge, how frequently you should be doing it. And then, the end results of like, how do you feel after your 3 days, your 4 days, or your whole month of doing a microdosing program? How's it making you feel geared towards your initial intentions? Yeah. So, yeah, I believe it plays a part. It plays a role. It does in my own personal life. I can give testimony to that. I know many other people that would as well.
I watched a show on Netflix and it was talking about how the indigenous people that initially produced the mushrooms, that they are actually endangered. So would you say that it's beneficial for everyone to start growing their own mushrooms at home instead of from a different source?
So yeah, to a degree, yes. So I always, always highlight, and I'll fast track it, but we're in the current climate, what they're saying is a psychedelic renaissance. There's a lot of what would be considered psychedelic tourism happening, people going all different places to have these exotic experiences with these exotic plants. In some cases, some of these plants take many years to mature to be ready for using and processing. And as somebody who works closely with nature, and in the food growing industry, I'm also aware of the role that nature plays in producing enough for the environment. It kind of calculates and gauges, how many humans are eating this, how many animals are eating stuff, how many of these animals, are eating and pooing it out and allowing me to get from one place to another place, helping me to spread my seeds and stuff like this. So it's kind of calculating and working things out, and may not calculate for, 30,000 people leaving from America, 50,000 from, the UK, another 100,000 coming from this place to a nice place, a paradise, and uprooting plants and, and having their experiences and feeling like, just paying money down is supporting the cause. But nature's currency isn't money. It's a different type of currency it runs from. So I'm very conscious of that and aware of that. And I say that to say, for example, if you're into ayahuasca, you're going to find ayahuasca in the Amazon region, in Peru and so forth. It's been gifted to those people in those places. They're the gatekeepers. They're the custodians of that. Another example being, if you're into iboga, you're going to find that in Central Western Africa. This is the places where it naturally grows. These are the people who are the custodians of this. They are the gatekeepers. No different from Salvia divinorum, which you're going to find in Mexico. That's the only place it grows. Those people have been working with it for years, not years, hundreds of years. And, they are the custodians, the gatekeepers. They're the ones who it was gifted to. So I'm saying that to say that when you understand how certain plants are in certain places, but then you also understand that mushrooms are on all the continents on planet Earth and are thriving, and will continue to thrive in the ways that they do naturally, simply because they're so resilient, at the same time so undetected, because we think just when we see a mushroom it's the fruiting body, but there's more to the mushroom than that, you understand? So with that said, then you realize that mushrooms are actually the gift of the planet. They're everywhere. They're the most sustainable, psychoactive that we could be using, in the current here and now. They are also easy to grow. So you've got those options of, wild and foraging and being conscious of how much you harvest, but then you can go back and also cultivate your own, where you may not be able to grow iboga, legally as well, where you're from, or there are ayahuasca vine in your apartment in New York, but you can grow some mushrooms, so that's why I'm an advocate, not just for mushrooms because of that, but one reason to approach it sustainably. And so I understand, in regards to like just people who are, Maria Sabina being one of the most famous ones that people know about, who is a Mexican native, who introduced the world to mushrooms by way of Gordon Wasson and some other American, researchers. And they promised to keep the information sacred and, within the community and to themselves. But that information ended up on the cover of the Life magazine, and the whole world knew about it. And then the Beatles, the Grateful Dead, and all those people that I mentioned earlier on, some of their members and influencers then, all made their way to her community. And the community wasn't prepared for that influx. It was more detrimental to the community than beneficial. It was more detriment to her personally, to the point where she, wasn't supported by her community anymore, because she was told that she should no longer help the gringos, according to her, her texts. But she continued to, and therefore the community didn't support her. And then later in her writing, she suggested that the mushrooms stopped supporting her as well, because she didn't listen. So that's the outcome sometimes of what the impact of the Western world, or at least the Western mentality has, or the impact on, other places of the world. And we think, yeah, but I paid $6,000. I paid $10,000, man. I paid for it. And it's like, yeah, but, it doesn't really work like that. So it's about how do we approach it where it becomes more sustainable and a fair trade.
Yeah, definitely, because I think everyone around the world would benefit from herbal medicine and ancient practices, but how do we make it to where it's not wasteful or disrespectful, or where we're paying our respects?
I think one of the most important things is that I've learned through the plants is like learn about yourself and learn about your environment. Wherever you are in the world, you do have sacred plants. It's like learning about what grows in your neighborhood. I think that's really important. That's the most, like how I've learned in the United Kingdom, there's, indigenous psychoactive plants that the ancient people were working with. But for the most part, most of the people in those communities in the UK feel that they need to go to Peru, they need to go, wherever it may be for, an ayahuasca experience. And I'm saying, you're missing the trick by thinking the grass is greener, somewhere else. If you stayed home, you don't have to stay home, because I love traveling. I haven't got anything against traveling, but it's more important to learn what's going on in your own environment. So when you go to your local forest, what do you have there? And even if it's not in your local forest, it might be, on the coast of your country, and you need to go and find out what's going there, because we have no problem jumping on a plane to go to, the Amazon for 6 weeks. And a lot of those people, let me not generalize, but a lot of those people that do make these voyages and come back, as I said, I don't think it's fair trade. There's a lot of craftiness taking place. I say that to say that when I was at one of the last conferences in the UK that was talking about psychedelics, the Breaking Convention, there was a whole panel for pretty much, it was either a day or 2 days at least, that was just talking about a lot of people's naivety in going to Mexico, going to Peru on these retreats and being robbed by the organizers themselves, being physically abused. A lot of the single women in particular that were going for their healing work, or ended up going there and getting wrapped up in, in a lot of manipulation, So there's just a lot of things that now is becoming trendy and, hip to go and have these experiences. There's some people who are profiting from that in different ways. So, it may not be a sincere curandero, or a shaman, so to speak, that you're actually going to see. It might just be Jose down the street who's put on the right attire. A few people know him and like, yo, we can make thousands of bucks through doing this. I know how to make up ayahuasca. You know what I'm saying? So like, let's do it. And they do it. And if you look the part and it appears from a naive set of lens that this is authentic, you would go in there. Then they were sharing you that a lot of these so-called shamans and then take advantage of the women that that come there. So man, it's a lot safer to grow mushrooms in your windowsill, bro. That's what I'm saying. And be with your loved ones and the people that are around you that can really give you the support than you going out and being isolated in these, unknown places and spaces, by yourself, being, very vulnerable.
And usually it's with other people, like other people you don't even know, right?
Yeah, I believe in April, we're coming up to that now, yeah. In April, there's a conference coming up, I believe it's in California, when it's in the physical location, but it's also online. And that's one of the big things this year is, just this whole psychedelic tourism and the kind of dark side to it all, that people are not really privy to. And if you go into it naively, like I know people who meet people, they're like, oh, I heard that my friend, they had an ayahuasca experience. And, when they went here and there, and then they just go looking for something on the internet, and anybody can make a web page now and make it look really cool and professional. So, if it looks sincere and they're saying all the right things, but then you arrive and it's not what, it's like bookings.com. The room, the photos they
Everything
had,
looks different.
yeah, not what you know where you're at, and then it's like it's too late. And then I've got also some sincere people who do these things, who actually put these things on, you know, internationally, and they're also like a lot of people come really unprepared. They're not really sure what they're getting into, you know. So even some of what, you know, the commitment to the task of coming somewhere where there's mosquitoes, snakes, scorpions, you know, you name it. And then you're saying that you're coming here to do your healing work, but you haven't broken the barriers of just dealing with certain basic fears. To them, it's like, well, these are not things that we're scared of, fearful of, but you've now got to go through this first before you can actually just like let go and relinquish of stuff. So there's all that type of stuff that I think people don't consider when they say, yeah, I know I got to go to the jungle. I've got to do it in the jungle. I'm like, okay, on the right dosage, your bedroom will turn into a jungle if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. So as far as tips, do you have any tips for anybody wanting to try? Like, should we, any kind of psychedelics, like maybe like even the people around you, because you did kind of cover that right now, but just any other tips you have, like before going into something, especially like ayahuasca.
So me personally, I've not done ayahuasca, just for the records, but at the same time, there's a protocol that's well known within this, you know, the circles of educating yourself about psychedelics, which is the first step you should do. And when I say education, for me personally, if I'm familiar with you, I'm going to say your education is basically looking at whatever fears you may have about doing this, just addressing those. Yeah. So if you think things like, is this going to kill me? Am I going to lose my mind? Do people go crazy off that? Or maybe just do some Googles and find out how many people have died of ayahuasca, how many people, and you'll find out that it may not be as much of scary as the actual data out there, that's provided will show you. So you need to educate yourself to remove the fear, because some people think education is, well, let me find out how your trips are and what happened when you took ayahuasca, what happens, and that's not the type of education that I think is useful in this experience that is very unique and personalized. There's some common threads, common themes that happen on psychedelics, but ultimately the word psychedelic means to navigate your psyche, to go into your mind, into your mental space. And my mental space and everybody else's mental space in this room is different. We may have collective things that bring us together, and experiences will allow you to say, oh yeah, that happened to me, but it's very unique to you. Although I may eat the apple or eat the blueberries, and you eat the blueberries, and we all say it tastes nice, it still doesn't taste the same. It's just different, and it's really being open to that. And once you're open to that, then you should consider things like setting and intention. So if once you're comfortable, like, I'm actually going to do this is something that I feel comfortable doing. Setting intention is about creating the right mindset. So being comfortable, maybe not totally, fearless. If you can move into this fearless, that's great. But if you do have like, oh shit, I'm still a bit nervous and anxious about it all, that's really cool. That's like natural. That's what happens, especially the first few times you're doing it. Or even maybe till this day, you could be doing it for 10 years and you're still like, oh shit, Saturday night's coming and I need to get ready, prepare myself. So the mindset is just getting your mindset together as best as you can, feeling comfortable, making sure that, you're not coming into this space, feeling angry, just having an argument with someone, or, bringing your luggage. You bring your luggage, but don't consciously bring your luggage into that space, so that's your mindset. And then setting is the actual environment itself. So creating an environment or being in an environment that you feel comfortable in. And that's why I personally encourage, and it's just my own personal opinion, that for the most part, if you're going to be doing it by yourself or with people who are new to this, like to do it at home, like the first few times. I know people love outdoors. I love outdoors. I love nature. But nature and outdoors, for me, for my early experiences, there's just a lot going on, And if you're, if you're not used to seeing, I don't know, a tree talk to you and stuff like that, and it's just like new experiences, which are great. But to really build a relationship with mushrooms in particular, which I know is a living being, it's an organic thing that's alive. You're basically building a relationship. So it's like, before you jump in head first, it's like, let me get to build a relationship with you. Let me fill you out. So doing it at home a few times, I was taught, to do it at least 3 times, at home and with somebody. They don't need to be a guru or, some specialized shaman, just your friend, a loved one who knows, respects what you're doing and will be there for you. And the only things they really need to be there for you for is to make sure you don't harm yourself, you don't harm anybody else, and you don't try and go out your house running naked, telling everybody that you're God. You know, it's like, yeah, you can be naked and God inside, you know, like that's where we're going to be today. And that's, you know, they facilitate, they hold space. They're not there to guide you or to take you on a journey. You take yourself on a journey, you allow the journey, you know. That's how I start off, like, mushrooms, I've never taken you before. Just tell me who you are. Let me find out more about you. Then allow them to be your guide. So these are the approaches, some of the approaches that I have. If you want to, you can then consider music, your music playlist. You can consider actually creating a space with candles, fragrances, and you name it, a setting that suits you and is complementary to, you know, the type of experience that you would like to have. Over all that said and done, I also would then say, be prepared for none of that to work and you to just have the mushroom experience, you know. You might plan like, oh, I want to work on my anxiety tonight. And you have this experience where it's all about, you know, or it may address your anxiety, but from a perspective that you was not prepared for. You know, it could bring you back to your childhood. It could give you, you know, it take you to other realms and places and spaces, and or just give you lessons that at the end of it all, you're like, what the hell was all that about? You know, like, that's not, and no necessarily why you intentionally came into the experience, but you download files, you receive files that you can then use, apply, or it makes more sense later on down the line kind of thing. So it's like, go to class, take your notes. That's, you know, in real classes, that's what I say, you know, you make your notes, but you know you're going to forget tomorrow some of what I've said, and the day afterwards, then you got to go back to your notes and you got to kind of cross-reference your own experiences with, you know, whatever notes you've made, as well as the person who might be sitting for you, because they can be really important. We would all, you know, and I was taught as well that the person sitting for you shouldn't necessarily be in the same room as you. Like, you've got your sacred space, you've got your space that you've created. This could be your bedroom where you're going to do, and they're just in the front room. And you could have a knock code, a bell, or something just to let them know when you need them. It's like, what do you need? I need water. I need a hand to go to the toilet. You know, that's what they're there for, you know. And or they're just there to tell you that, yeah, there are elephants floating on the ceiling. They're just there to reassure you and reaffirm the things that are going on, and not to make you feel like you're going crazy, which you may feel like is happening if you've never seen elephants floating, you know, on the ceiling before. So these are some of the things that you would consider before partaking, you know, on the day itself.
So there's a myth. I don't know if it's a myth or it's true or not, but suppose you're not supposed to look in a mirror when you're tripping. Is that true, or?
It all depends, man.
Because I haven't looked. I
do,
I'm scared.
and it's fine. It always just feels like I'm aging.
Oh, that's what you're scared of, maybe?
Is that unique to me only?
I've had various experiences in front of the mirror. I was initially told don't play with mirrors as well, and then I was told that, you know, and I'm around people who, you know, say they got lost in mirrors, you know, in the whole mirror experience, you know, and playing around with mirrors and putting mirrors around, and next thing they're, you know, them, like, is it?
Yeah.
You can't, yeah. And I felt that before. I felt that you can, it's mirror magic, you know. Before psychedelics, people do mirror magic. That's actually, you know, an art form. So, you know, people on psychedelics who did do mirror magic can go, you can open up stuff and experiences, anything from being childlike to aging and becoming, you know, unhuman. You know, all of those things I've seen in a mirror, you know, in my own experiences. Like, that doesn't look like me. You know, it's not me to where, oh, that's me. I look more handsome today. Wow, oh, look at all my spots. Like all those extremes. Like I've seen it all in the mirror under the influence.
Yeah, the one time I did look, I remember I don't know why I looked like a potato kind of, and I was just like, I'm never looking again, because I already had that in my mind, and my skin, everything just looked like a potato, if that makes sense.
I get it, man. I get it. You know, these are all the types. I'm saying there's no limit to the types of experiences that you can have. You know, one of my early experiences, which was one of my first experiences, was Salvia divinorum. That's my first psychoactive experience, which was, you know, indigenous to Mexico, but I learned how to grow it, and and it was legal to grow at the time as well where I was at, so I could grow it. And I remember reading some books about it. That's why I learned, like, don't get into reading people's testimonies too much. It's great to hear a few bits, but, you know, those people should always remind it's going to be unique to you. But in this particular series of books that I was reading on Salvia, it was saying how that one of the common things that happens with Salvia is that you become or can become the things that you're touching and connected to. So there were testimonies in books where people were like, I became the chair that I was sitting in, you know, or I became the sofa, or I became my bed. There was a man in one of these testimonies that was saying that he actually became the outside wall. and it just became his house wall. And was just like seeing all, the cars and people go by and stuff. So I remember reading that and then trying salvia, not having that type of experience initially, but then on a particular occasion having this experience where I became it was like I became sewn to it. I had that experience of feeling like sewn to the chair, and actually my hands then just like automatically moving, and becoming the desk, and then it would hit the wall, and it would be the wall to the point of like, oh shit, I need to get away. I don't want to become like, and I was like, but in the moment thinking, this is exactly what they were talking about in the book. So there was a cross reference that made me feel comfortable about it all, because yeah. But then just knowing that, anything goes. And that can be challenging to open yourself to this tonight. Anything could happen. I could have all the right music set up. I could have all the candles lit and everything that I want for it to be a nice night. And it could be a traumatic, challenging experience that you have. That's just the reality of it.
Do you, what's your advice on that? Like, I know there's people that see supernatural stuff, or maybe because that's what was already in their mind beforehand. Like, they're scared because they think they're going to see some stuff. Or, but the people that have, how do you, and don't want to ever do it again, do you feel like it, like, what's your advice on like encouraging somebody to give it another try?
I'll give you some advice. It was the same advice I was given as a student by way of my teacher, Kalindi EE. So two things come up there. So one, I was taught that if you ever get to the first part of your question is, so what if people see things? What if people, and they don't want to see things, or it's scary? Well, Kalindi would say to me and you and us in this room, well, that's like going into the ocean expecting not to see fish. You're opening up that space and place where these things exist. If you believe, and even if you don't believe, this is where that it opens up that lens for you to see these things. And it's not so much I don't think it's that you're seeing things that are not there. I think you're seeing things that are there, for all that you just don't see with your lens. As we know, there's stuff floating in this room right now, even on an atomic level, particles and stuff. There's spores, mushroom spores flowing through you. I can't see them. But once you're in the space and place, you're like, I can see some other stuff that
I couldn't see before.
It's always here. That's what I'm reminded. It's always here. So yeah, it's like going into the ocean expecting not to see fish. This is, you're going into that place and space. And as far as if that does happen, and you're like, oh shit, that's scary. I don't want to have that happen to me again. If I brought that to Kalindi, he would says, now you're starting to make progress. The day you say that you don't want to do this shit no more, it's like, that's the work. That's actually what this place and space is for. And if you can come back and reflect, like I've said that several times in my experience, like, wow, I've taken too much tonight. And yeah, I just want to be Darren again. Like, I just want to be back in the room. And then it might take the immediate rip when you're back in, like, oh shit. Like just that reflection of like, I was there, but I was scared, nervous. I wanted out, to where you get more comfortable just being in those spaces and just being prepared for the unknown, the unexpected. That's what I think the most important personal thing you can get out of psychedelics is that every time you just don't know what's going to happen. It's the unknown, and it could be anything. Like, at least when I go walk down the street, I know there's some things that, I could get run over, I could get shot, these things could happen, the dangerous things. But when you go into it's like, you really don't know how it was going to end up. And if you can get comfortable with that and used to that, I think, we were still discussing this about 2 years ago now when the pandemic first hit and people were moved out of their comfort zone and they were used to certain things, and now, they're not at home. I mean, they're at home, they're not at work, they're not at school, they're not at uni, whatever it is, and they had to adapt. It was the unknown for a lot of people. They were not really prepared for that. But for the most part, a lot of people that are in the psychedelic community, just in those kind of alternative thought processes, were like, I put myself in uncomfortable positions before, like, people who do dark room technology and people who go in ice tanks. It's like, I deliberately put myself in these challenging, uncompromising positions just to prepare you for real life scenarios that might take place, and that being one of them. Like, you're going to be stuck in your house. Like in the UK, it's like, we got you on lockdown, you're all staying in your house for the next 3 months. That was like really challenging for a lot of people. Some people, it was heaven.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They
were like, I love this at home stuff.
Totally.
I practice a lot of herbal medicine practices on myself, and whenever it first started going around, I was kind of excited to challenge my immune system in a way. And I in the biohacking community, I think it was like an extreme mental and physical challenge that I was like, bring it on.
I think, again, that's mentality. Your intentions play a big part in, the results that you get. Did you get it?
Yes, twice.
Okay. And how did you deal with it?
Naturally.
Okay, yeah. And you came out the other end. You've got a learning experience from it. You've got, and you now speak from experience. So for me personally, if that was me, it would have removed the fear. Like, oh shit, I got through it. And if you believe solely what was being presented, people were dying like that, and that was a reality for some folk. But I think your mental state plays a big part in how you deal with things, and psychedelics can definitely support you in being in a good mental health space. There's other techniques, other approaches that you can apply to help you in times like that. But I do think, like, if you can microdose and have your practice, whether it's yoga, meditation, and that's what's going to get you through these times, these kind of places and spaces. If you're dealing with herbs, whatever it is, it's like, as I say to people, get in where you fit. I learned that from Too Short.
Yeah.
The CDC actually says that fear is the leading cause of death whenever someone has COVID. So that just goes to show how much your mind state and what you believe in has to do with your physical being.
No, I agree, man. I say to folks, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know this stuff like scientifically, and I'm going to go based on other people's testimonies at this stage. But, they talk about health, that health state that's what it is all the time. Like, there's a lot of people who are, in, physical health challenges, however, I've got physical health challenges, but those challenges only really started to happen the day they went into the hospital and was told that they've got this thing, and then they start to become ill. People who I woke up this morning, I had a little pain, then they're in the hospital, and then 4 days later they're not here no more. It's because they were told and then supported to believe in the illness, and therefore the power of the mind is and then we can look on the flip side of that and just show you the placebo effect. And then it kind of shows you the power of the mind, that if you believe you're sick or you believe you're healthy, that plays a big part in, and then if you're doing the things that complement that or don't necessarily complement that, this is the war that you really fight. This is the mental war that you really fight of your health. So I always give an example of one of my other teachers. He was like, there was one point in time when he was really sick or ill, not feeling great, to what degree, and whatever his herbal remedies would usually be, they weren't available. And he suggested, his own testimony was that he went into his cupboard, he went to his refrigerator, and he ended up just getting a soda. And said, like,
This is gonna work.
Yeah, like, shit, there's sugar in here, there's stuff in here that I need, and that's what I want to take from this, and just, people do that now. I see people put, affirmations on their bottles of water, put crystals in it. It's like the same thing. So I know that, a can of Coke, but if that's what you've got and that's what you believe, he was suggesting that that's the power of the mind, and just one of the processes for healing yourself. The mind, before you think about what do I put in it, you actually can do it with your mind or use things around you to support that. And water, a good night's sleep, if we forget about those things, how important they are in supporting that, along with eating healthy, along with doing your practices. And then when you really find out what people do for healing, what I've come to find is it's like a way of life for most cultures, like getting up, doing a physical practice. It's not like, I've got to go to the gym. It's just like, this is what we do. We got to pick up all these logs and take them to the other side. That's the exercise that you do. You just live a healthy lifestyle. There's the mangoes on the tree. You don't have to try to live healthy. It's just like, it's a healthy approach. And I always think it's interesting that you've got these so-called third world countries or places that have the minimum amount of health resources. And although it's portrayed that it's unhealthy or it's a healthy environment, actually really thrive. They're still here to this day, man, alive and well. Places where there's famines and there's droughts and there's disease and stuff. And again, where I'm from, London, and where I'm at, in Houston and stuff, like, we're top tier. And but if I look around, I'll be honest, I see a lot of obesity. I just see all the things that it's just so it's just like, the mind, man. The mind is really, and if you can control people, we can live at, for the most part, one of my other teachers used to teach, how they used to put it, it would be like, disease and sickness is what we consider health. Like the barometer of level of what we consider, like what we say is healthy is actually not healthy. Like the bar's been dropped so low that we accept illness as normal health, good health. Like, oh, your heart's beating the right way, your blood pressure's this, this is the average, and that's cool. And you can go to your doctor and you say you're healthy. He'll say you're healthy. You're a healthy young man. But really, the diagnosis that they're giving and how they go about it isn't truly telling you about your health.
Yeah, definitely. Because even now, going to the gym is man-made. They used to be active all day. They didn't need to go to the gym to be physically healthy back in the day or in other communities now. But okay, we're gonna start wrapping it up now. I want to know your favorite part of your career and what you do.
So I wear many hats, man. I'm wearing one today. It's unusual for me to wear caps and hats, but in principle, I wear many hats as a teacher in particular, and, from young people, in mycology and, psychedelics. And for me as a teacher, teaching and sharing what I like to do, for me, the biggest reward is when I see people being able to apply what I share and actually do something with it and move forward with it. And because in this current climate with, mycology and psychedelics in particular, there's a lot of people who are new and naive to this whole thing, and like I said earlier on, there's people who take advantage of that, and in other areas of my life I've been taken advantage of in my naivety of learning things. People are like, yeah, so you need to buy this herbal pack, it's $300 and it's going to do this and you're going to feel amazing at the end of the month. And I just feel like, yeah, I can't do that, I don't want to do that, I don't want to be that guy. And so with my work in teaching on the most basic level, making sure it's translatable, people can get it, pick it up and run with it, that's all I need to see. So anything from one of my students in the past who came into one of our food enterprise classes, so we grow food to sell food, young students who get in trouble, just come out of prison, we have identify abandoned green spaces in the community or in their educational area, and then we grow food, they sell food. I was saying we try to get them from going weed bags to salad bags. That's my goal. We're not going to sell keys of weeds, boys, but we're going to sell keys of salad. Let's find our market. We apply that same approach, but to do that work and then have students say, who when they came to the class the very first time are like, sir, this class is bullshit, who wants to learn about gardening? You failed in life, obviously, sir, if you're teaching gardening. They've got a whole different approach to what how I see, and that's cool. But then to see them 2 sessions later nurturing their little seedlings because now they see the value of it, or just down the end of the line where I've got students who are like, all right, so now when I go home, and when I say go home, a lot of the young boys that I work with them in the Caribbean or Africa, and they're like, when I go home now, they're like, oh, sir, I've got land at home. My family's got land. So now when yeah, so what? We can clear the land. I'm going to grow. Just the inspiration to see that, the motivation. And that's all just geared around, living a healthier lifestyle. So we're teaching people how to grow mushrooms, and they might want to grow gourmet mushrooms just to taste some tasty mushrooms and get their rewards. I call it mushroom porn, man. I'm like, just send me all your little grow pics and stuff. I love all of that. And that's what I do. That's why I do what I do. That's, I've had to be more tighter, as you mentioned earlier, kind of like an entrepreneur element to it where it becomes sustainable for myself. But for me, the rewards are just seeing people grow. That's really why I do what I do.
Love that. And what is the project that you're currently working on in Houston?
Okay, so I was in Houston to deliver my workshops. We had one based around psychedelics and yoga and ancient practices and how they connect and combine with each other. I also delivered one of my beginners of cultivation workshops, and that's what I do. That's what people kind of know me for when I travel. But also on the ground, as I said, I do a lot of community work back home. So when I go to communities, I want to see how the community is. So whether I'm in Houston, whether I'm in LA or Oakland or Mexico, Guatemala, all these places that I've been to recently, it's let me find out where the real community is, the people are actually from here, where they at, where do they go to? I was told yesterday, yeah, there's a restaurant over there, that's where all the tourists go. I'm like, well, that's where I'm not going. I want to go to where because when I'm at home, I don't go to go shopping where all the tourists go shopping. I go in my local area. So and that's how you meet the local people. So with that said, finding out what community projects are taking place, working with young people, everything from enterprise, food growing, psychedelic, mycological societies, just where the everyday people are at, that's where I like to be and connect with. So then I can bring some of the other things that are in my toolbox that are not just geared around psychedelics and mycology for the audience that are already interested in that. I'm really trying to reach the audiences that haven't got a clue, that say, mushrooms, sir, that's bullshit. And I've got to spend a few weeks working with them for them to say, all right, I'm feeling these mushrooms. Yeah, I want to grow oyster mushrooms, sir. I've got a new, I want to put these on my pizza now. Whatever it is, that's what I would also like to do wherever I travel. So therefore, that's some of the work that I'm doing in Houston as well in the local community.
I love that.
developing at least, getting to the point of development, and because there's a process, like I said, because most people don't even know that they're a mushroom having a human experience, so they definitely don't know that they like mushrooms. They think mushrooms don't taste nice and they're this and that, so there's a lot of barriers that I've got to get broken before we get to the point where like, all right, so I am a mushroom and I accept that. But we get there, we get there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. We're so happy to have you today.
I just want to say a few words before we go though. So again, I was just from the outside looking, and I've seen you and your work and what you're doing, and I was saying it on the way down. Like, I get invited a lot to do different types of platforms, everything, a lot of the academic stuff, which is really cool. So you get into those places and spaces. But I like being on the ground. I like working with the everyday people, as I mentioned. And I was feeling what you was doing, and I was like, this is more the energy in the audience, and the places where I feel that this could go, where we could reach, is better. Like I said, just like with music, it's going to reach other places than us being at the top psychedelic conference that might be happening in Las Vegas or happening in LA or happening in Oakland. Like, that's great. I love that. That's what I do. But at the same time, I like to do the stuff where it's like, I said, they're younger, young energy, good vibe. It's going to get out to the, other places and spaces where I think this is really important to do. So I would encourage you to keep doing what you guys are doing. I'm really happy to come to this part of Texas as well. Just get out and see what other people are doing. And I'll just say, keep up the good works as well. It's really important.
Thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate you.
Make sure to check out all of our links and Darren's links down below for any workshops or our other podcast episodes. Or if you want to work with us in music, our links for that are below too. Thank you.